Have you ever wondered how the world's biggest engineering projects come to life or fail spectacularly? From billion-dollar megastructures to shocking construction disasters, we uncover the stories behind the world's most ambitious projects. The Sydney Opera House disaster: how a $7 million dream became a $100 million nightmare. One of the most breathtaking structures in the world, a masterpiece of modern architecture. But behind its beauty lies one of the most expensive construction nightmares in history. The Sydney Opera House was supposed to cost just $7 million and be completed in 4 years. Instead, it took 14 years and ballooned to a staggering $100 million. How did this happen, and why was its very own architect forced to leave the project in disgrace? This was supposed to be a triumph of design and engineering, a defining symbol for Australia. But from day one, the project was doomed by rushed planning, political interference, and engineering challenges no one had foreseen. As costs spiraled out of control, tension grew between the government and the architect, Jern Utzon. In a shocking turn of events, Utzon was forced to resign before his vision was ever completed. So, what exactly went wrong? How did a project meant to unite a nation turn into one of the biggest construction disasters in history? Let's go back to the beginning. Before it became a symbol of Australia, the Sydney Opera House was just a dream-a-vision to transform Sydney into a world-class cultural capital. But who had the boldest idea to make it a reality? Hundreds of architects from around the world submitted their ideas, but one entry stood out despite being almost rejected. Utzon's design was unlike anything ever attempted before, a series of massive, interlocking shells rising from Sydney's harbour like a fleet of white sails. But as breathtaking as it was, no one had any idea how to actually build it. The Sydney Opera House was now an official project. But there was just one problem: Utzon's breathtaking design had never been attempted before. No one actually knew how to build it, and that was only the beginning of the trouble ahead. With a brilliant design and ambitious plans, construction on the Sydney Opera House began in 1959, but almost immediately, engineers and builders realized something shocking: the structure Utzon had envisioned was nearly impossible to construct with existing technology. The Opera House's roof wasn't just a challenge, it was an unsolved mystery. No existing construction techniques could properly support its sweeping curves. Engineers were forced to experiment in real time, often tearing down and redoing sections that didn't work. Because the government rushed into construction without proper planning, the project became a living experiment. Instead of a well-structured build, workers found themselves correcting mistakes on the fly, leading to massive delays and rising costs. Under intense political pressure, construction teams were pushed to work faster, often ignoring crucial engineering refinements. This led to more errors, more budget overruns, and growing tensions between Utzon and government officials. By the mid-1960s, the project was spiraling out of control. The budget had already tripled, and the design issues were far from solved. As pressure mounted, a shocking betrayal was about to change everything. What started as a $7 million cultural dream had turned into a financial nightmare. Costs were skyrocketing, and the government was struggling to find a way to fund the never-ending construction of the Sydney Opera House. Every year, costs surged higher, and there was no turning back. The Opera House was only partially built, but the government couldn't afford to stop. They needed a drastic solution to fund this spiraling disaster. With no other funding options left, the government turned to an unexpected solution: lotteries. While controversial, they saved the project. Thousands of Australians unknowingly became investors in the Opera House every time they bought a ticket. As costs spiraled, public frustration boiled over. Many believed the project was a waste of taxpayer money, a failed dream that would never be completed. In a shocking turn of events, the very man who designed the Opera House was pushed out before its completion. Jørn Utzon left Australia in 1966, never setting foot inside the finished Opera House. His vision had been taken from him. With Jørn Utzon gone, a team of local architects was brought in to finish what he started. The government was desperate to complete the Opera House after nearly 2 decades of delays, and in 1973, the world finally witnessed its grand opening. Despite all the chaos, setbacks, and political battles, the Sydney Opera House was finally ready. But as the world prepared to celebrate its opening, the shadow of controversy still lingered. The world celebrated the Opera House's grand opening, but not everyone was thrilled. Some believed the rushed modifications had compromised the design, leaving its interior unfinished compared to Utzon's vision. The biggest shock of all, Jørn Utzon's name was never mentioned. The man who dreamed up the Opera House, who fought through its toughest challenges, was left out of its grand opening. Many saw it as the final insult in a long history of political betrayals. Despite its painful history, the Sydney Opera House stands today as one of the most iconic architectural wonders of the world. Its soaring shells have become a symbol of Australia, attracting millions of visitors each year. But behind the beauty lies a cautionary tale of political interference, engineering struggles, and an architect whose vision was taken from him. The Sydney Opera House was plagued by political battles, budget disasters, and engineering nightmares. But despite its turbulent history, it has become one of the most recognized landmarks in the world. So, what lessons did the world learn from this infamous construction failure? One of the biggest takeaways from the Sydney Opera House disaster: you can't build a masterpiece before you fully know how. Today, engineers rely on cutting-edge simulations and AI-driven designs to avoid costly mistakes. Had proper cost assessments been done, the Opera House wouldn't have gone 14 times over budget. Today, smarter financial planning ensures that mega-projects don't spiral into economic disasters. What was once an impossible engineering feat is now something we can build with ease. If the Opera House were constructed today, it would take half the time and cost a fraction of the original budget. Against all odds, the Sydney Opera House became one of the most beloved landmarks in the world. Its story isn't just about failure, it's about perseverance, vision, and how even the biggest mistakes can lead to something extraordinary. So, what do you think? Was the Sydney Opera House a masterpiece or a disaster? Let us know in the comments. If you love engineering, architecture, and mega project stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. This is Mega Projects Work, and we'll see you in the next video. The Sydney Opera House is a story of vision, struggle, and redemption. It's one of the most breathtaking structures on Earth, but at what cost? Let's quickly recap the biggest mistakes that made this project one of the most infamous construction failures in history. It's a cautionary tale for architects, governments, and engineers alike. But despite all these failures, the Sydney Opera House is now one of the most celebrated landmarks in the world.